Hi, and welcome to the Child Care Aware of Minnesota Legislative Update for Tuesday, February 18th. We are covering action through Friday, February 14th at the Minnesota Capitol. Lots more to report now that things have been up and rolling. As I mentioned last week, we do have the House back in session and committees beginning to meet much more regularly. At this point in the session, we have Republican chairs of each of the House committees, but a Democratic lead. And as mentioned before, once there is a special election on March 11th, that balance could shift again. But for now, we do have a Republican chair in each committee. We also in the Senate have Democratic chairs that has shifted back to Democratic control. And both sets of committees, as I say, have been off and running. 4 hearings this last week that touched on issues either directly related to childcare and early education or tangential to us. First of all, in the House Fraud Prevention Committee met and talked about an Office of Legislative Auditor report from a couple of years ago, the beginnings of a very long process and many bills related to cracking down on how state agencies monitor and support and receive reports from particularly nonprofits who implement many of the programs. Again, this is not just about early childhood or childcare, but it will touch on issues in that area. The Senate Jobs Committee met last week and heard 2 bills. They're both funding bills to fund the Father Project, which is a Goodwill Easter Seals program that looking to expand or deepen its funding. The House Children and Families Committee met, again, for the first time as a bipartisan committee now, and had an overview of the funding proposals and the general structure of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families for some of the members who had not been present before, and had a bit of a discussion in particular about technology and also a little bit about the Great Start Compensation Support Program and some changes that might be coming to that around data. So we'll keep you tuned in on that one. And then finally, the Senate Health and Human Services Committee continued a discussion around some of the jurisdiction changes that are taking place because of the creation of the new Department of Children, Youth, and Families. So many of the programs that used to fall under HHS or DHS now are under that committee, and so learning more about that for all members. Bills have been coming in fast and furious, and as I mentioned each week, be sure to go to our website and check our bill tracker. You will see any bills that have been introduced and also any action taken on those. And then each week and during this time, I will highlight any bills that actually had a hearing or are moving. But just in general, I would say we're starting to see a few bills related to funding requests. Most specifically, you will see a request to once again put more funding into the Early Learning Scholarship Fund. But there are also some project-specific asks. The Father Project, as I already mentioned, some funding for Head Start, some funding for the Parent Child Plus program. And then we also have a proposal that's going to be heard this week in the House that was heard in the Senate for a property tax cut for family child care, I should say credit. So some funding related bills are starting to pop up. As I've mentioned many times, we tend to see spending bills show up a little later once the forecast has been released, and I'll talk about that date in a minute. The other category, I would say there's 2 more broad categories of bills. If I had to summarize what's showing up on the bill tracker, one of them, as I've already touched on, is fraud prevention. And again, this is across many programs, but I think because of some of the past history of having that concern in the CCAP program from many years ago, and some of the more recent concerns that came out during COVID, I am sure that we will see bills related to fraud that will touch on childcare or the agencies that regulate childcare. And then finally, some regulation bills, things that would seek to make some of the waivers or some of the temporary fixes that were done during COVID permanent, that would seek to help childcare centers or family childcare homes run in ways that go beyond what's currently in statute. So some changes to ratios or some changes to staffing, that kind of thing. So we'll be keeping an eye on those bills to ensure that, of course, we're also concerning health and safety as part of that. As for things coming up this this week. Big one to mention is Advocacy Day for Children at the Capitol, which is on Thursday, February 20th. We really want to encourage anyone that can to come out. There's plenty of information online. We'll make sure we give you a link to either register or read more about the event. The morning is the rally, and then there are activities later in the day if people want to choose to participate in those. But the rally is 9:30 to 10:30, and strongly encourage you to come if you've never been, especially, but even if you have. So that's coming up. Quite a few hearings this week that I will report on next week in some of those same topic areas that I've mentioned. And then finally, just want to mention that we do have a date, what looks to be a relatively solid date for the February forecast, which is in March, which is on March 6th. And again, this is when we really get a better sense of what the state is predicting in terms of income, either from state dollars or if we can have any sense of clarity about that from federal dollars. So it does help to set the tone and the budget targets for what the legislature will use the rest of session. So lots going on. As always, please let me know if you know of issues or when you look at the bill tracker, if you know of bills that you feel we might be missing, and always happy to add those. Otherwise, we'll plan to see you here again next week or possibly this Thursday at Advocacy Day for Children. Thanks so much for joining us.